Hi everyone, welcome back to the RotarySwing.com injury prevention series. I'm your instructor Chris Tyler, and in today's video we're going to be discussing a very serious topic in the golf industry, and that's lead hip pain. I'm going to show you why you could possibly be running into hip pain, or why you could be putting your hip into a dangerous position, number one. And number two, in the second half of the video, I'm going to show you a great drill that's going to help you move more dynamically back over to your left side the safest way possible. So let's go ahead and get started now. Okay everyone, so in part one of this video, we're going to go ahead and define why or how this could potentially be putting your hip into a dangerous position. And here's what I want you to think of, is that the hips are making a very dynamic move in the golf swing. They are shifting, okay, and they're rotating. It's when we start to have way more of one of those things in the golf swing that start to put the hip in a dangerous position. So if you're getting too much lateral shift, or you're getting too much rotation of the hips, you're going to have some problems, or you could potentially be putting the hip into a dangerous spot. Now, I want you to look at golf as a whole, like golf instruction and how it's evolved over the last 50 to 60 years, or even since the beginning of time. You look at the Hogan era, and then you look at the Nicklaus era. There's a lot of big, free-flowing body parts in these golf swings, lots of big movements. Where you look at the modern-day golf swing, it's very compact, it's very put together. Not to say that any of those guys were doing anything wrong, but what I want you to think of now is what are most of the guys that were going through the Jack Nicklaus era of golf, what are they battling with now? Well, you see a lot of those guys having had hip replacements or battling with hip pain now. Well, if you look at why that's happening, this is what we're going to define. That big move back in the day was a big drive off of the right side, really fire the right side of the body, and that's a really important power source in the golf swing. I agree with that. The legs are a big, big power source, but it's how we use them. So if I were to continue to drive off of my trail side here, you're going to notice that my hip gets out past what we call neutral joint alignment. Now, neutral joint alignment is just a fancy way for us to say if you were to take all the skin and fat off of me, and I was to stand here and find the center of my hip socket, which is right around 2 finger widths inside of that pointy pelvic bone on the front of your body, or we usually can use this belt loop too on the front of your body as well. But if I were to stand here, all the skin and fat off of me, and I were to drop a string right down through the center of my hip socket, what you're going to notice is that my knee, my hip, and my ankle are all lined up. That means I'm considered in neutral joint alignment. Now what I want you to notice is if I push off of my right side, you can now see that my hip socket is way out past where it's supposed to be. Now what can this do? Well, this can start to put a lot of stress on the outside part of the hip girdle. You can start to run into labrum tears, which are no fun at all. This is why a lot of people start to suffer lots of hip pain. It can actually start to move some of this stuff down to the knee as well, and we'll get into that in next week's video, but a lot of the problems that come from your golf swing are caused from the trail side pushing too hard, okay? So if you're pushing, if you've noticed on camera that your heel is way up off the ground at impact, or if you've noticed that your hip is way out past neutral and you've got a lot of secondary axis tilt where my spine is leaned way back, then you're going to want to pay very close attention to the second part of this video, because I'm going to teach you how to move safely back into the lead side with one extremely simple drill that will make sure that you're safe every single time you pick up the club. Okay, so now that we've identified what the problem is or why we're battling with some of that hip pain, let's go ahead and lay out a really good detailed game plan about how we're going to move perfectly in the golf swing so that you move the safest way possible and the most efficient way possible. So the golf swing is much like any other hitting or throwing sport. We're making a very athletic style move. What I want you to think of is, think of a baseball pitcher first, okay? So if I were to pitch the ball back at you at home, you were home plate, and I were to go into my windup, I would load into my trail leg here, and you would see that my lead leg here would start to externally rotate. Now that's not the correct anatomic term, but we would externally rotate our lead leg, we would plant our foot, we would rotate our hips, and then we would throw the ball, okay? That same sort of move is actually happening in the golf swing. So when I go ahead and I start my golf swing, I'm going to load up to my right side here. I'm going to feel as though I'm making that same sort of external rotation to pull my hips over to the left side. Now, why is it important to pull? Well, we're going to go back to that safety mechanism that we talked about before. If I extend my arm out here, my body's not going to let it extend any further than that. It's just the way of us being able to protect ourselves. If I were to start to pull from my left side, I'm going to use these leg muscles to help pull myself over. It's not going to allow me to pull myself out past neutral. Okay, so we identified that in the first part of the video, is that being out past neutral joint alignment is going to start to put that stress and that pressure. So if you were to start to pull yourself over there, Now I'm into neutral joint alignment and I can start to rotate, I can start to post up, and I won't ever feel that stress or that pressure ever again. Now here's a drill I want you to try out. If you're like, okay, how do I actually even make that happen in the golf swing? Well, here's what I want you to do. I want you to stand up, proper stance width here. We set up about 2 inches outside of neutral joint alignment on both sides, okay? And all I want you to do is drag your left foot towards your right a couple times, okay? Drag it on the ground towards yourself. You can see that I'm ripping up the grass a little bit here. Do it about 3 or 4 or 5 times. And as you're doing that, I want you to feel the muscles that are engaging to move that leg over to the right side. Okay, you start to feel a little bit more in the inner portion of your thigh here, okay? Then what I want you to do is that rather than dragging the foot in, I want you to plant it in the ground, and I want you to use those same muscles to pull yourself over to the left side, okay? So you can see here, I've loaded in my right side. I'm gonna pull myself over to my left. And now I'm perfectly in neutral joint alignment. I've pulled myself into the hitting area, and now I'm ready to start posting up and releasing the club. This is a great way for you to be able to move dynamically in your downswing and also move as safely as possible. So try it out. So if you've been battling with some hip pain, or if you've noticed on camera that your right foot's coming way up off the ground, or if you notice that your hip's getting way out past neutral joint alignment, then you want to make sure that you're focused on using the left side of your body to pull yourself into the lead side so you never battle hip pain again. Thanks again everyone for tuning in to another edition of RotarySwing.com's Injury Prevention Series. Again, I'm your instructor, Chris Tyler, and if you have any questions or comments for me, please feel free to post those up below. The more we keep it social, the more we learn. Also, do me a favor and click that like button down there for me below, and subscribe to our channel by clicking on this button over here on my hand. That way you get notifications anytime we put out any of our new free content. And we've got some great stuff in store over these next few months with more injury prevention videos. And we've got another great short game series that's going to be coming out here on the sooner side. So let's get out there, let's play some of our best golf in 2016 and make sure we do it the safest way possible.
Rotate your body to get power instead of using the much faster right arm. Notice as I swing this stick into the bag how slowly my body moves and how quickly the stick can move when I use my right arm for speed. I was able to generate this speed by doing 2 actions.